Hi. For some time now, I've been wanting to begin a series of videos that talk about power. And I've been wanting to address it in the right way, an open way, a way that hopefully many people can recognize or at least accept that's forthright and easy to accept and understand or disagree with. I think once I get in my flow, as it were, I think if you're going to disagree with me, you probably won't want to watch it, and that's okay. Everything about what I want to talk about is about your choices, what you choose to do with your life, as I have learned is there for me to have chosen to do with my life. So I think to begin with on this journey into the path of power, part one is about acknowledging power and recognizing what that could mean. Now, I may switch between using the word power in favor of gifts, mainly because I'm still undecided, I suppose, even on my journey, what the best word to use is. And sometimes I feel like it's gifts because power suggests, I don't know, something a little bit more mystical. And I found out a long time ago, really, that people expect certain things to be completely infallible, especially measured against something like science, which science is expected to be 100% infallible. And power or gifts, they work different to that because you are engaging with other forces, other people, and sometimes it doesn't work. That's okay. I think it's important at this stage to sort of talk about how you practice, and this can apply for everyone, and it's not meant to be offending to anyone. I can't control if you choose to be offended. Again, I feel that this covers a spectrum of how you choose to practice, which is your discretion. But I think sort of at one end you may, or you make the conscious decision that you don't have power, or you you grant that power to another focus, to another manifestation. And the obvious choice of what I'm referring to here would be if you choose to follow a religion and pray. And if that's your form of practice, that is completely your decision, and I'm not here to say you are right or you are wrong. Now, somewhere in the middle of this spectrum I have in mind is that you accept power and you use it in conjunction with a focus. And as a personal aside, this is where I feel I am now, in with my belief of a Sartre. I accept that I have some powers, some gifts, And I am now using that in conjunction with the acceptance of the Aesir and associated forces like the Vanium and land wights and spirits and ancestors into my practice. And other people say there are varying faiths where it accommodates people having power and using it in conjunction with those faiths, and not sort of shaming you for having it. I mean, obviously there are other ways that this power is referred to, but I'm trying to use a catch-all generalizing term that you can go, oh yeah, it's just like, you could be talking about magic, you could be talking about miracles, you could be talking about, it's just sort of how the power manifests. Now, at the other end of my spectrum is that you may have power and you don't use an external focus, in that it's your power and you are solely responsible for it. They are your gifts, your abilities, and you don't accept sort of, let's call it, you don't accept religion. You accept that there are mysteries, but I don't know, for whatever reason, that is your choice of practice. That power is yours, and it is yours to use as you see fit. And let's say between these three sort of main distinctions, there's going to be lots of various different sort of ways of categorizing what I'm talking about. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I don't, because I am still discovering what is before me on my path, and anyone who says they have all the answers is someone that I would expect to be questioned or to sort of observed. Now, moving on to what is kind of like my next section of notes is to talk about power and who has it. And there's a simple answer to that, is for everyone has power or gifts. Everyone. I mean, it's how you choose to acknowledge what is a gift or power and how you use it. For some people, this could be as simple as confidence and influence, whereas sort of this can sort of go from various skills, such as a trade skill or the ability to absorb knowledge, to something like just being able to pick up an object, sort of like a book, and sense who has handled this book. Something that's more, what should we say, a power rather than a gift. But everyone has these abilities. It's just like with any focus of abilities. I mean, let's talk about, say, the ability to do sport. Some people are terrible at it. Some people have no interest in it. Some people can just pick it up without even thinking about it, and have a lot of people go, oh, it's just par for the course, isn't it? That these people like sports, they've just started playing that sport, and they have a natural gift for it. It's the sort of power I want to be talking about in this series is no different. There are various sort of powers, and these can be as simple as, for me, how you protect yourself, to how you project yourself, or to how you influence others, or pick up on external powers. Everyone has a level of, or an affinity towards doing them, and some don't, or they're not very strong, and they got to work harder at it. I know that I have worked over a number of considerable years to be where I am, and some of it was very hard work, and in the practice of developing sort of what you might call power, there were some things that just didn't pick up, and I've seen people that have been really gifted and do these things as easy as breathing. Again, it's just that sort of, we're all built to excel at some things, and others we have to work hard at it, or we struggle. So moving forward from there, it's then a case of, how do you discover what your powers are? And I think the most important thing to begin with, and especially if you choose to continue watching these videos, is not to come in with expectation. Don't be envious of what you don't have. It's about exploring and discovering what you do possess, and strengthening that and working with that, so that it's there for you. Ultimately, we're all built differently. We all have different powers, different gifts, and say some people might be very good at closing themselves off, and some people are just sponges for what is drifting around out there. And it's no good saying, I don't know, for example, I want to read tarot cards for someone, and struggling with it, because that might not be your gift. When you're exploring power, you need to come into it without expectation, and to find what you are good at. And that's sort of really the next stage, which is the discovery of your power. I was very fortunate when I was younger that I got involved with a circle where we did, I don't want to say tests, exercises. And some of them were really fun to do. Some of them were not so fun. It was more sort of a case of working with each other, and there being this group of people from different walks of life that ultimately, for a period of time, we were in this circle and discovered what was ahead of us, or what was there in the moment. For me, it was very much in this time I discovered for what was relevant, what has been relevant for most of my life, was learning how to close myself off. I pursued this path having sort of drifted, being exposed and being extremely terrified by sort of external forces that led me to want to close myself down, to defend myself. And it seemed very much that was my calling, and to sort of recognize what can be seen as threats. One of my purposes, it seemed, when I was in that circle, was there was one woman who was in the circle who was very negative, and it reached a point where I recognized it, and me and my friend spoke to the person who ran the circle about it, and she stopped coming to that circle. And it wasn't that it was like social stigma to, like, I don't know, she wore a perfume that offended us. It was something far more serious than that. And it dealt with a problem that was bringing negative energy into our circle. So that was how I discovered what for me was, I would say, my biggest strength, which was to close myself down and be able to open up and close myself down and protect myself, because I had, up until that point in my life, which was, say, my early 20s, had a lot of negative energy latch onto me and make my life probably more of a struggle than I needed it to be. Now, with going through that little story about my circle that I was a part of, there comes sort of acceptance and responsibility of your powers and gifts. I want to talk about acceptance first. I mean, this is almost sort of a variation to expectation, is accepting what you are good at and making use of it. I mean, it's, again, you might enter into discovery or looking into these things and want to be able to read tarot or read runes or be able to pick up objects and sort of say what the history of that object is, or pick up sort of auras, or be able to heal people. And if you haven't got it, you haven't got it. I mean, it's, if it needs work, it needs work. And if it's something that you feel is not what you would want to have, then you're going to struggle with accepting it. There are just some things that are, they're just the way they are. I mean, it's, this is one of the things with life in general today. A lot of people struggle to accept. I think that's probably all that needs to be said. There are some people who struggle to accept, as equal as I think sometimes it's people struggle to be content. It's perhaps the hardest struggle. But it's important to accept what power you have, and to also accept that, you know what, power isn't 100% always going to work, even if you've got a really good affinity towards it. I mean, I've always, it's not probably the best example, but I always felt everyone could say, and this is going back to sports, that David Beckham was an expert footballer with spot kicks, dead kicks, if you like, free kicks, corners, and that, with the expectation on David Beckham that every time there was a free kick, he should score a goal. But of course, he didn't always score a goal. And power is exactly the same. There's always going to be some hit and miss. And that's part of accepting how power works, is it is infallible. It defies what some people would say any credibility, because obviously it can't be quantified by science at this present time. It is a mystery, and some people can't accept that. And again, that's down to the freedom we can enjoy as a race, and that's okay. That's okay. how you practice your life is how you practice your life and your gifts or power. Now, to move forward from power and who has it and that, there's also responsibility of power. That's a difficult one. I think it shouldn't be used negatively, because there's enough negative energy out there. But you're under no obligations to do anything that you don't want to do. Again, it's just like, for me, for a long time, I've been very private about my power and how I use it. Mine has been quite an isolated path, because my focus has been about defense and how I look after myself with power. So you'll always get those people say, oh, you could charge for readings or whatever. Well, you only do that if you want to. You don't have to do that. You don't have to share what power you can use if you're uncomfortable doing it. Unfortunately, I think we are still in a day and age where probably the more, what shall we say, pagan paths will still struggle in how open you are about it. I mean, obviously here in the UK, in England, I would say we are more open to talking about power and that, whereas, let's say, in the States, and with some of the videos I watch, it's very much sort of taboo. They talk about being in the broom closet quite a lot, and I think that's quite unfair that people have to live like that. But there's been a lot of irresponsibility with power and religion that sort of, obviously in the past, has been deadly, has been terminal for people, which is a terrible shame. Now, to move forward, I would have to say that I have observed, particularly in the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, a trend of what I would consider to be uncontrolled power, or that people are just open to outside influences and they are unaware of it. I don't want to go into what are my beliefs in that, because I'm trying to be broad and neutral, but I do feel that sort of a lot of people struggle with some aspects of their health, in particular mental health, and I think this is because people aren't in control of their centers, their center of gravity. They're not rooted, they're not protected. And because they're not aware of these things, and this is in part, I would say, almost to the fact that, probably in fairness, there would always be someone who can argue this point, and knock yourself out if you want to make that argument, but the power of religion over the, I don't know, let's say the last 50 years has reduced, or the last century, it's not as strong as it used to be, probably in favour of money as a manifestation of power that doesn't cater to the spiritual needs of of us as a race. And so as things become progressively oppressive, that's a mouthful, people have become open and oppressed by outside influences, and it pushes, it feeds, it's a parasite, and it doesn't let go. And as more and more of or dark energies converge around a person or groups of people, they just latch on and make people struggle. So what do we do about it? I mean, obviously, consent has always got to be a driving principle. I'm not going to force anyone to go, you got to listen to what I say. What I'm saying is the right thing, and this is what you need to do, because I can't do that. I won't do that. Even though I might feel it at times that there needs to be bolder, braver action, it has to be a case of educating people or encouraging people to be open to a course of action. I think really my personal belief is I would like to see people be willing to at least explore the subject and explore those basic principles that I learned so long ago in my circle, where it was meditation, sort of cleanse yourself and be able to open and close yourself and walk away from the practice or the gathering, I should say, like when we knowing that you were focused and protected. Because at the very least, I have the belief that a lot more people following this course of action would find their lives improving drastically. Of course, some people might not. You going back to how you practice, if your preference is to go to church on a weekly basis, you will probably be a lot better about how you feel about yourselves, because you are focusing your power through that medium. At least, if you are still watching this video, give it some thought. You don't have anything to lose from it. It's, again, it's your choice how you decide to do things. Obviously, I've talked about negative power, and that's what I want to finish this video on, because yes, there are negative powers. Like, you may give focus of power form, or if you believe there are other deities and spirits, they're not all good. They are dark and hostile, and it might be, if you've experienced something because you are open without knowing it, you may have accidentally explored something, been open to something, and had something that has then hit you like a truck and scared you. It's what I experienced when I was younger, before I joined a circle. And these things are dark and hostile to your health, whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual. they're gonna come for you. They're out there. And this goes back to sort of, if you're at least willing to explore the basics of opening and closing yourself and cleansing through meditation, they are the very simplest things that can sort of protect you from these negative spirits. Now, in one of my other videos, and my wife will tell you that I will always mention this. Now, obviously, this is just a film, and it's a quirky film called Odd Thomas. And for me, when I watched that film, it pretty much sent a shiver down my spine, because it's one of the first films I've seen where it has acknowledged and given a voice to how our spiritual world is around us, especially if you're unaware of it. I mean, I would sort of say it's one of those things, one of those films I would recommend watching, because don't take the narrative of the film as gospel. It's understanding that there are elements to it. The actual story, that's a story of fantasy, but the world in which Odd Thomas lives, with the way that there are these spirits and that when I watched that film was just sort of, here is someone who understands what is going on, not just on the physical level of the world. But of course, you don't have to believe that. I'm not saying, I'm not going to tell you how to practice. I'm just sort of hopefully encouraging you to take a step on that path, one way or another. So I'm going to end here with sort of like my first episode, if you like, of the Path of Power, and hope that you're still here at the end of recording this, what is now my sort of longest video. It's going to take some editing, and hope that you will join me for other videos in this series I've intended to do for some time, as well as my other videos like wandering the path of Asatru and various aspects of the poetic Edda. Anyway, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Cheers. Bye.